My wife put on an active amnesia from a car accident just to meet her young boyfriend's wish of becoming a VP. She planned to oust me from my position. When I passed by, I overheard her boyfriend telling her, "Aren't you worried your husband's gonna stop talking to you?" But she was indifferent. "I'm just letting you have fun for 7 days. After that, I'll say my memory's back, and he can't blame a sick person." I paused but didn't call out her lie. The next day, at the meeting table, my wife slammed her hand down, saying her boyfriend was her real husband, and ordered me to leave the company and hand over all projects. Everyone looked at me, expecting me to stop her nonsense. But I didn't fight back. I just quietly signed the resignation papers. Little did she know the project submission deadline was only 7 days away, and the client only recognized me as the key contact. In 7 days, her plans would crumble. She'd face huge penalties and possibly jail time. As I was about to leave, her boyfriend Henry stopped me, demanding I delete all my contacts, saying they were company resources. Having run the company for years, I knew there was no such rule. He was targeting me on purpose. I turned to my wife, Helen, and asked, "Is this your idea too?" Helen blankly stared, then nodded coldly. If I deleted those contacts, there'd be no turning back. She was sure I'd be reluctant to go, so she was being tough. It wasn't surprising. We'd been married 7 years, no kids. The company was like our baby, and I loved it more than she did. Last week, during a meeting, she proposed making Henry the technology department head, despite him lacking the qualifications. The old-timers at the company went along to keep the peace, but I stood firm and vetoed it. Helen knew I wouldn't let her run amok at work. So, to get her way this time, she faked this whole amnesia drama to force my hand. Colleagues saw us arguing and tried to calm things down. "Jason, don't be mad. Helen's not herself right now. As her husband, you need to be more understanding and forgiving." Helen, buoyed by their words, declared, "My husband runs this company. If anyone goes against him, they go against me." The coworkers smiled, joking with me about how Helen loved me dearly, even if she got things mixed up. I couldn't find any humor in it. The truth was the opposite of what they saw. Helen and I usually got along, but in conflicts, she never backed me and always wanted me to give in. We argued often about it, but she'd always say, "You're family. No matter how bad it gets outside, we can always patch things up at home. It's different with others. Upset them and there's no fixing it." I finally realized when you truly love someone, your first instinct is to protect them, not coolly weigh pros and cons. Henry suddenly kicked over a chair, shouting, "Jason, you pathetic old man. Helen's husband is me. Keep it up, and I'll shut you up right now." He cursed as if I were the wrongdoer. Helen just stood by him without saying a word. I said, "All right, fine, I'll delete it." I pulled out my phone and posted about my resignation, ready to cancel my work account. Helen, sensing I was serious, panicked and stopped me. "Forget it. As an old employee, you can go without deleting anything." Everyone breathed a sigh of relief, except Henry, who was upset. "Babe, as VP, I don't get that say." Helen, usually tolerant of Henry, shot him a stern look to stop. She then transferred $5,000 to my account, promising, "The company appreciates its founders. You'll get what you're owed, but it'll take some time. We'll settle your severance in 7 days. For now, take a break." She assumed I didn't know her amnesia was fake and thought a week later she'd use it as an excuse to apologize and make up. But she didn't realize one crucial project was due in 7 days. It was worth a lot of money, and missing the deadline meant hefty penalties. Before, I'd have suffered in silence for the company's sake. But I'm done. I want nothing to do with the company or her. As I prepared to leave, Helen reached to fix my tie out of habit, then awkwardly stopped herself. I viewed my phone, refunded the transfer, and erased all the baby nicknames in my contacts. Finished, I calmly said to her, "Helen, let's divorce." She was stunned and blurted out, "Divorce? Why?" Realizing her slip, she corrected, "Divorce? What a joke. Henry's my husband, not you." Watching her lousy acting, I couldn't even be bothered to call her out on her lies. I didn't want to waste my breath arguing with her either. So, I just went along with her little show and kept the joke going. It was me who tricked you into getting the marriage certificate. Let's just go and get divorced now. Henry's face lit up immediately, eager. It's about time. Let's do it. Helen hesitated, frowning, ignoring the holes in my words, just trying to brush it off. Never mind, this feels a bit weird. I'll decide later. I was puzzled. Didn't she like Henry? I offered to divorce to make room for them, but she didn't seem thrilled. In the past, I'd definitely question her, ask the ridiculous question she'd probably laugh at, whether she ever loved me. But now, I couldn't care less about guessing her thoughts. I just wanted the divorce quickly. I raised an eyebrow and teased her. Do you not want a divorce because you can't let go of me? Henry sulked instantly, tugging Helen's sleeve. But honey, aren't I your most beloved husband? How could you marry someone else? Under our dual pressure, Helen reluctantly agreed. When the three of us arrived at the Civil Affairs Bureau, just as we were about to go inside, Helen suddenly acted like she'd remembered something, griping my hand. This place looks familiar. I remember it now. On New Year's Eve, I joined the long line with you to get our marriage certificate. She thought mentioning our happy memories would stop me from going through with the divorce. In the past, that's how she always won me back after upsetting me. But on that day, not only did I overhear her faking the amnesia, I also heard her talking about our marriage. What's romantic about it? I only chose to marry on the last day of the year because I promised. But spending a lifetime with someone I don't love, that's not what I really wanted. I kept delaying until the last day, then I finally made up my mind. As long as I marry someone to have a life with, well, he's got good conditions and can be useful. He's nice too. A suitable marital prospect. Listening to her praise me while standing outside the door, my heart sank. I thought we were in love, but she was just using me. No wonder she guarded her finances and power closely once the company started doing well, never letting me have a piece. She was always cautious of me. I was a bit lost in thought when Helen shook my hand, asking if I remembered. Being in such a distrustful marriage was exhausting, and cutting losses early was the best option for me. I shook my head and dismissed her. Nope, you must be having illusions from your head injury from the car accident. Helen's smile froze. Despite her attempts to appease me, I stayed unmoved, remembering she's still a patient, and began to feel bad for not being more forgiving. Frustrated, she linked arms with Henry and intertwined their fingers. You're right, it's all fake. My only husband is Henry. Once we're done, Henry and I are getting married. She stomped into the building with joy, like she was there to get married. I couldn't be bothered and followed suit. We had barely registered before being ushered into a mediation room. Helen sat in Henry's lap, taking grapes she'd bought and peeling them, feeding him piece by piece. She thought this would make me jealous, but instead, it reminded me of the old Helen, cold and shy. In public, she'd refused to even hold my hand, saying it was improper to be so touchy. Now she was a completely different person, so open that it was embarrassing to look at her too much. Even the staff in the mediation room couldn't watch anymore. With my firm stance, we quickly proceeded into divorce proceedings. I kept a cold face the entire time, clearly irritating Helen, which drove her to stubbornly complete the process in anger. Once the divorce certificate was in hand, I let out a long breath, feeling the weight lift off. Getting a cab home, Henry stuck his head in, noticing I had put the home address, and he got angry. Go home? You two are divorced. That's not your home anymore. You better pack your things and get out now. Helen smiled on the side. Yeah, get the outsider out so hubby can move in. She wanted me out to make room for Henry. No sane guy would accept that. I wouldn't have before myself. But now I just nodded, indifferent. Okay, I'm moving. I booked a hotel in the cab and once home started packing up. Things had spiraled beyond Helen's control. She tried to soften up, pretending to regain some memory, holding our wedding photo, asking, Jason, when did we take this picture? Without even lifting my head, still packing, I brushed it off. It's fake. Photoshopped by me. That completely infuriated her. She snatched my suitcase and chucked everything outside. Get out. Now. She slammed the door heavily shut. I shook my head, silently picking up my clothes from the ground, shaking out the dust, tucking them into the bag. Inside, Henry spoke worriedly. Sis, this is all my fault, insisting on becoming the VP. Seeing you divorced, it hurts. Maybe I should explain to Jason. Helen calmed him, offering a few comforting words. It's not you, Jason is just being petty over the illness. Ignore him, I'll spend these 7 days with you and deal with it later. Jason is easy to get back. A crook of my finger and he'll return. I stepped into the elevator with my things. She was wrong. This was truly the end, with no chance of reconciliation. In the days apart from Helen, I felt relieved, though former co-workers kept messaging me relentlessly. Maybe in desperation today I got a call. Jason, you need to come back. The project deadline is coming up fast. I was about to refuse when I heard the commotion of someone snatching a phone. In no time, Henry's angry voice came through. Jason, you've already been fired, so stop meddling in company affairs. A colleague was furious. Henry, what are you doing? Don't you realize if the project fails, the company stands to lose a lot of money? Henry shrugged it off. Why panic? I've almost finished the draft, it'll be ready in a few days. The colleague's shocked voice rang out again. This is nonsense. We can't trust your level of work. Besides, the client specifically requested Jason to design it. This is a scam. Where's Helen? I want to talk to Helen. Henry's threatening voice returned. My sister is sick. If any of you spread rumors, don't be surprised if I have you all fired. As soon as I heard this, the call ended. Still, I could predict how it would all turn out. With me as a precedent, they dare not act rashly and would have to endure it. I shook my head, deciding not to think about it or concern myself with the company anymore. I'd been working hard for the company, but now I finally had some time to catch up with friends. Every day was filled with fun and drinks, a perfect way to forget all my worries. On the 7th day, dressed in a suit and holding the groom's boutonniere, I headed to a friend's wedding. As I walked in, I texted a friend. I found the boutonniere. It was left in the car. I'm bringing it to you now. Just after I sent the message, I heard a familiar voice. Thank you all for coming to celebrate my and Henry's wedding. I turned and saw Helen, wearing a wedding dress and holding Henry's arm, welcoming guests. Outside the room, their wedding photos were displayed. Henry noticed me first. Grabbing Helen's chin, he kissed her corner of her lips. The crowd squealed happily around them as Helen shyly tucked herself in his arms. Suddenly, she looked up, meeting my gaze and froze. Realizing what had happened, she stood upright, intentionally keeping some distance from Henry. Henry bit his lip, displeased that Helen seemed to lean towards me. Mistaking me for someone crashing his wedding, and seeing the crowd gather around, he latched onto my hand and pleaded, Bro, I truly love Helen. Please let us be together. Don't become an obstacle. Helen raised an eyebrow, ready to defend him, but then noticed the boutonniere in my hand. She instinctively thought I was there to get married, and her eyes turned red. Jason, how could you marry someone else and hide it from me? I knew she misunderstood, but there was no need to explain much. I coldly replied, Helen, we're already divorced. Show some self-respect. Helen gazed at me, unable to keep acting. She dramatically mimicked regaining memory, then clutched my hand and asked, Jason, why am I in a wedding dress? Are you here to marry me again? She tried to take the boutonniere from me to put it on. I held her hand and said blandly, Stop pretending. I overheard your entire plan to pretend amnesia with Henry. Facing my cold eyes, Helen knew there was no point pretending anymore and dropped the act, pouting. I only did this because you were biased against Henry, constantly oppressing him. I had no choice but to do this. You have no idea how well Henry's managed the company while you were away. I laughed sarcastically. Managed well or covered up well? Do you know the project deadline is today? Helen froze, turning to look at Henry. Henry smiled and assured her, Don't worry, I've arranged everything. This small matter doesn't need your concern, sis. Then he provocatively glanced at me. Jason, don't you know? I submitted the design long ago. The client's already mass-producing it. Sorry, I excel and you're disappointed. Hearing this, Helen nodded satisfied, about to speak when her phone rang. Smiling, she waved it at me. The client is calling to praise Henry. You really ought to reevaluate yourself and apologize to Henry. Pleased, she answered the call on speaker. But right after that, an angry voice came through. Idiots. We wanted Jason's design, but you submitted the intern's junk pretending it was. This is severe breach. You've cost us greatly. Prepare for the $1 billion in damages and see you in court. If you can't pay, prepare for jail. Helen was stunned by the reprimand. How could this be? We've never had issues in all our previous collaborations. Before she could explain, the call was terminated. Until now, I was the one handling such affairs, leaving her mainly uninvolved. Now, having just complimented Henry, but he's caused a major issue, she was too proud to ask me, so she merely frowned and questioned Henry. What happened? Didn't you say it was all sorted? Henry's face turned equally unpleasant as he grumbled. The client's shameless. After all my effort, how could he dismiss my work like that? It's just a minor project. Who cares? Helen was infuriated. That's $1 billion in penalties. The company is small and nowhere near capable of paying such an amount. Additionally, this incident tarnishes the company's reputation utterly, making it difficult to secure future projects. Even while being reprimanded, Henry was indifferent. So what, a measly $1 billion, just give it to him. His dismissive statement made it sound like the penalty was just a mere $1. But it's understandable since the company's money, and Helen's reluctance to punish him, meant no loss to him personally. Naturally, he couldn't care less. Even Helen couldn't bear his outrageous remark anymore. She regretted letting Henry act as vice president in a moment of folly. She just intended to give him a trial for a week, not anticipating such chaos due to his lack of management skills. Who would have thought that her actions would completely change her fate? Henry was still muttering curses about the client, using every curse word he knew. Helen couldn't take it anymore and interrupted him. Shut up. Didn't I tell you, you have to be meticulous and serious about the company? How could you just go and upload your own drafts? You're just an intern. Henry pouted, clearly annoyed. I'm the VP. If I don't even have the rights of a VP, why bother being one? And come on, sis, so what if I messed up a project? It's not the first time. Why are you being so fierce? He seemed pretty upset, rambling on about a lot of projects he'd botched. Listening to him actually cleared up something for me. There was a project I supervised myself, but by the time the draft got to the client, it had completely changed. Helen blamed me and chewed me out for ages, but I had checked it over and over to make sure there were no issues before we submitted it. Turns out Henry accidentally deleted the source file when he was submitting it. Not daring to ask us for another copy, he took it upon himself to upload the unedited version. The client was furious, saying none of the issues were fixed, and immediately complained to Helen, demanding an explanation. Helen wanted to fire one of my interns to take the blame, but I wouldn't allow it. In the end, the situation escalated, and as their supervisor, I had to take responsibility. No matter whose fault it was on me for poor management. I took the punishment, got demoted and my salary cut. And to salvage the project, I humbly apologized to the client, drank so much I ended up in the hospital 3 times, just to turn things around. But now I find out it was all Henry's fault. Helen knew and covered for him, deliberately throwing me under the bus, forcing me to fix things. Helen hadn't noticed my realization yet and chided Henry a bit more, then helplessly said, "Fine, everyone knows your abilities aren't up to par. I can't expect you to do much. Anyway, Jason, you're more capable. I trust you can resolve this matter. No matter how difficult the project or picky the client, you've always pulled through. I was wrong before. Henry really isn't on your level. It's my dear husband who's the best." I was about to refuse when Henry, visibly jealous, cut in. "Sis, I'm not as bad as you make me out to be." For once, Helen didn't coddle him and sternly reprimanded. "Enough with the excuses. Look at the mess we're in today because of you. We made you VP to let you play around, show off a bit. With your skills, you should really stay out of work matters. Helen really laid into Henry. It was rare for her to side with me, but I wasn't happy about it. Her praises for Henry came from the heart. When she complimented me, it was just on the surface to get me to do what she wanted. I used to love her sweet words, but now that I see what's really going on, I find all her actions annoying. When Helen again asked for my help, I raised my hand to refuse. I've resigned. I'm not in a position to handle company matters. Helen looked a bit unsettled and quickly added, it was all just a misunderstanding. What Henry did was truly excessive. Henry apologized to Jason and we can put this behind us. Henry wasn't having it. Why should I? I didn't do anything wrong. Why apologize? He looked defiant, unwilling to give in. Helen coldly warned him, Henry, don't forget who gives you your money. The company losing too much doesn't benefit you either. Do you still want that BMW? Under the threat of losing his fancy car, Henry reluctantly offered a half-hearted apology. Sorry. Is that good enough for you? Helen was really generous with him, buying him luxury cars and all. Back in the day, I scrimped to buy a car to get around, and she nagged me for half a year. Our finances just got stable and you spent 10 grand on a car? That's wasteful. Why can't you ride my old scooter? When I started out, I rode that scooter everywhere. Why can't you? I remember explaining for ages, saying I needed to present well for business meetings. But she was never satisfied with my answers, blaming me for not spending money on her. Fed up, I took her to buy a gold necklace, which finally shut her up. Looking back on it all, it's clear who she really loves. I was in the dark until recently when it finally clicked. I shook my head, refusing to dwell on it. Helen mistook my motion for forgiveness and thought I'd let it slide. Just as she attempted to pull me away, a friend rushed over. Jason, you've been taking forever to get that corsage. You're going to make us late. Helen suddenly smiled, relieved. So, you're not marrying someone else? Why didn't you just tell me? Oh, I see, you wanted to make me jealous. All right, let's not fight anymore. Let's deal with the company crisis first. Okay? I gave the corsage back to my friend, shaking off Helen's hand. I'm going to a wedding. You made your bed, now you lie in it. Helen, not pleased, raised her chin and snapped at me. Is your friend's wedding more important than the company? Henry and I both apologized. How long are you going to drag this out? Oh, how self-righteous she sounded. If it weren't for her enabling Henry, things would never have gotten this bad. I ignored her and chatted with my friend. Henry, annoyed we weren't paying him attention, snapped, Jason, today isn't over. I'm still your boss. Is this how you treat your superior after all these years of working? Helen saw he was about to lose it and swear, so she scolded him a bit. Then she remembered she needed something from me, so her tone softened. Fine, I'll go with you to the wedding first. Once things are sorted, we'll deal with the project stuff. As she spoke, she was about to take off her wedding dress. I raised an eyebrow at her. I was tired of her pestering. How many times have I told her? Why can't she get it? Helen, we're divorced. I quit the job too. So in the future, don't bother me with anything from you or the company. People around us were giving her odd looks, making her uncomfortable. She looked at me awkwardly. It's all just jokes. Why are you taking it seriously? I chuckled. You have Henry living at your place. Is that part of the jokes too? Helen suddenly looked a bit guilty and said, it's just an act. Then she elbowed Henry. Henry immediately caught on and said, yeah, just an act. I've been staying in the guest room. If you really can't stand me, I'll leave. He looked at me challengingly. Ever since he's been living at home, he's been sending me video messages trying to get under my skin. He'd say how well Helen took care of him, making different breakfast every day. And Helen even blocked me and posted on social media about cooking. Cooking for the one you love is happiness. Yeah, I'm not the one she loves. I did the chores and cooking, and she never lifted a finger. I shook my head. No need, you're her husband now. It's perfectly reasonable for you to stay. Henry raised an eyebrow. I'm being humble here. Why are you being such a jerk? And come on, you can insult me all you want. But how could you not trust your wife after all these years? I replied indifferently, "Don't say that. I never pretended to have amnesia and brought another man home. It's better to just leave things where they are." Helen looked at me disappointedly, her eyes welling up. "Jason, you weren't like this before. Does she not get it? I treated her well and compromised out of love. But now the love's gone." I followed my friends to the private room, ignoring them. At the wedding, I was busy helping out, and my friend didn't ask about what happened earlier. After everything was done, I finally checked my phone. Turns out, the issue with the company project was already making headlines in our circles. Helen finally couldn't stand it. She had to calm clients down and deal with angry shareholders, keeping her constantly on her toes. During this time, Helen texted me for help, but I kept refusing. That really got under her skin. "Jason, I'm asking you to step in and save face. Don't be ungrateful." I promptly deleted and blocked her, not bothering anymore. The situation blew up, spreading beyond our industry, dominating the headlines for days. The company's stock was plummeting. Not only Helen, but the company's shareholders were getting restless too. Helen, with gifts in hand, brought the company's key staff to persuade me at the hotel lobby. Colleagues tried to reason with me. "Jason, couples argue, it's normal. Helen knows she was wrong. You should forgive her. The company really needs your help right now. Yeah, you don't want to see the company you built from the ground up go under, right?" Seeing old friends trying to persuade me, I asked, "Do you all know Helen's previous amnesia was fake?" Everyone went quiet. I saw clearly that their eyes held no surprise, only regret. I leaned on the table and laughed out loud. Turns out, not only did Helen betray me, but even my longtime colleagues and friends hid it from me. These people were only interested when there was no other way. Had the company not been on the brink of collapse, they wouldn't be begging like this. They all took turns trying to reason with me on Helen's behalf. Even Helen was low-key trying to please me. I pushed the gift she brought far away. "You guys are pretty capable, solve it yourselves." Seeing I was still strong-willed, Helen's face turned cold. "Jason, what's the point in ruining the company?" Hilarious. I'm just not stepping in to help. Yet she's blaming the company's troubles on me. I shook my head. "Helen, it doesn't benefit me if the company does well. I was on a fixed salary anyway. Not only that, but Helen also withheld my bonuses, saying since I was her husband, there was no need to waste company money. She'd just reward me with a home-cooked meal later. Yet Henry, who did nothing, got bonuses in various ways." Helen raised an eyebrow, telling me not to be capricious. She thought I couldn't let go of the company I created. But I wasn't that passionate young guy anymore. I've become practical too. I picked up my luggage and showed her a document. "I've already agreed to work for this company. Once my visa is sorted, I'm leaving. You guys can stop hoping." After leaving the company, I got a job offer from a company abroad. They've been trying to poach me, and I was very tempted. But back then, I thought my home was here. I couldn't just leave everything behind. However, now my home is gone, and my career of many years has also vanished. So I didn't think much and accepted the offer. Seeing the job notice, everyone froze in place. Helen couldn't believe I was so determined, and she murmured, "Jason, you're just trying to scare me, right? Didn't you promise to never leave me? Why hold on to my promises when she never kept hers?" Seeing they couldn't persuade me, everyone felt downcast. I stood up to say goodbye. Just then, Henry rushed out of nowhere, punching me. I returned the hit immediately. Seeing we were on the verge of a fight, everyone hurried to intervene. Henry, eyes brimming with tears, shouted, "Jason, you're such a jerk. You know, if this blows up, not only does Sis have to compensate, but she might also go to jail. You're always claiming you love her the most, yet you left the country when she needed you the most. That's just shameless." The one who actually messed up was Henry. How does he have the nerve to blame me? My co-workers thought he talked offensively, so they all chimed in to explain the situation to me. That's when I found out, over the past 7 days, Henry had been blowing the company's money. Now, with $1 billion compensation debt that can't be paid back, other partners are canceling contracts and asking the company for damages. Helen is already tangled in lawsuits, and if she doesn't pay up, she's headed to jail. So that's why it's blown up. No wonder she's panicking. But what's that got to do with me? I'm not interested in getting involved. But when Helen heard what Henry was saying, she looked away, wiping her tears. Seeing the situation change, the other colleagues started to plead. Yeah, Helen might have been a bit mischievous, but she and Henry are completely innocent. Nothing happened between them, so why not just pretend it didn't happen? Right, we've all been through these things. Life needs a bit of haze. Don't take things too seriously. Exactly. After all, you've been married once. No matter what, you can't just watch her lose everything and end up in jail, right? Looking at their disgusting faces while they try to persuade, I feel like even arguing with them would dirty my mouth. If this happened to their partners, they probably wouldn't be as calm as me and would have already grabbed a knife, threatening to kill the whole family. I shook my head, still indifferent. Helen gritted her teeth and softly pleaded with me. I've run the company for years, and I know there's never been a rule like this. He's targeting me on purpose. But I promise this is the last time. If you can save me this one time, I promise I'll come back to the family. If you're not happy, I'll fire Henry right now. I won't have anything to do with him anymore. Henry, with red eyes, said no more. But I still refused to turn back. No need, you should continue to be with him. Goodbye, everyone, or rather, never see you again. Ignoring Helen's cries, I went straight out, hailed a cab to the airport, and caught a flight abroad. As soon as I got settled abroad, I saw a message from a colleague. The company went bankrupt, and Helen, unable to pay the money back, had all her assets frozen and ended up in jail. And the cash and stuff Henry got from Helen was all reclaimed, used to clear the debt. I quietly switched off my phone, got out of bed, and headed to work. A new day began.